Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person. Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't. Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
There's insanity in the control room.
Who's got a hammer?
Big, massive dumps.
Stop Nation. Waldorf Nation. Hey, everybody, welcome to the show. Monday. Start of a brand new week, brand new, a new cycle full of disaster as usual. We're going to get to the fun stuff, of course, Republicans being Republicans, Joe Manchin being Joe Manchin, as obviously, as well as a little bit of an update on what's going on in Insurrection, the January 6th investigation, fun times, new stuff, not surprising stuff, but new stuff. Nonetheless, we're going to have fun. All right, so we're going to talk about Cowboys for Trump. Founders not happy. West Virginia, not happy with Joe Manchin, all that fun stuff. So, hey, thank you, TYT, for the raid. Appreciate that. Raid from TYT, 218 people. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me. It's going to be a fun show. So we're going to do, some political talk, of course, for the next hour. We got Congressmen busted, planning January 6th, all this fun stuff. Did I miss the Pokemon card story? No! The Pokemon card story is actually the last story. That's the fun stuff. Yes. Also, a great example of how the Paycheck Protection Program was massively abused and how there is a bit of an issue when it comes to our two-tiered justice system. So, we're going to start fun. We're going to have a little serious talk on that as well. So, all right. With that said, thank you again. If you want to, see more of the show, of course, if you're interested, please join us, follow us on Twitch, as well as, of course, on our Facebook page, YouTube, all that stuff. All right, let's do it. Let's dive right in. Several pro-MAGA sources are now spilling the tea on congressional co-conspirators to the January 6th Capitol insurrection. Of course, more like the protests that led to the Capitol riot. And this is according to a new report in Rolling Stone. They said that a slate of Republican members of Congress had participated in planning meetings for the protests that resulted in the attack at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. Two sources, according to their story, revealed that Representative Paul Gosar, Representative Lauren Boebert, Representative Mo Brooks, Representative Madison Cawthorn, Andy Biggs, Louis Gohmert were all present in dozens of calls with organizers and the group. Trump aide Katrina Pearson was also named by them as a liaison between Trump, the Trump White House, and the rally organizers. I mean, of course, you had a lot of collaboration, a lot of people working together to do this thing where they're going to try to take the election away from Joe Biden and give it to Donald Trump. Literally hand the presidency back over to Donald Trump, even though he lost the election. Yeah, of course. Of course. So now, Trump Chief of Staff Mark Meadows was also cited as someone who aided the group, along with Marjorie Taylor Greene. In fact, the organizer told Rolling Stone, quote, "I remember Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically. I also remember talking to probably close to a dozen other members at one point or another, or their staff." So now, when you get into Representative Gosar, things get very, very interesting. So Gosar apparently encouraged pro-Trump rally organizers to plan the protests in Washington, D.C. on January 6th by telling them that they would get a quote-unquote blanket pardon. Blanket pardon for another unrelated investigation. I don't know what that is. Gee, I wonder what unrelated investigation that is. But no, blanket pardon. Hey, you show up on January 6th. Blanket pardon. Here you go. That's Representative Gosar. No, wait a minute. Gosar cannot give blanket pardons to anybody. It's only Trump that can do that, which of course suggests that they were talking to Donald Trump. That Trump had said, "Oh yeah, no, we're going to give pardons. We're going to give lots and lots of pardons." So now Gosar actually repeatedly assured them of those pardons to the point where they believed that it was quote unquote done deal. Oh, it's done. We got the pardons for you. Everybody's got the pardons. Many pardons. The most tremendous pardons. In the interview, one organizer said that they were given the impression that Gosar spoke to former President Trump about the pardons and that they had been mentioned by name. The two anonymous sources also said Gosar told them, "I was just going over the list of pardons, and we just wanted to tell you guys how much we appreciate all the hard work you've been doing." As for Trump, the former president did tell the group that they were going to march to the U.S. Capitol and to tell the members of Congress that they needed to hand Trump the election. He promised that he would lead them and walk with them, but obviously we know the truth. We knew that that never actually happened. That he basically sat in his bunker, eating cheeseburgers, drinking Diet Coke, and watching the chaos unfold. And by the way, when members of Congress who were in the building were trying to get a hold of him, basically they were, different reports of Trump saying, I don't really care. I think this is great. Keep going. And refused to call out the violence and to try to stop the violence. Yeah, refused to call for his people to back down. So again, here we had Trump and other members of Congress planning this insurrection rally in order to use this lie to hand the presidency back to Donald Trump. So there's also more. According to the sources, multiple people associated with the March for Trump and Stop the Steal events that took place during this period communicated with members of Congress throughout the process. We would talk to Boebert's team, Cawthor's team, Gosar's team, like back to back to back. So now, Congressmen, so far, nobody's really said anything except for Marjorie Taylor Greene's team. So Nick Dyer, who was Greene's communications director, said that she was solely involved in planning to object to the electoral certification on the House floor, not the actual, insurrection, not where it got bad or violent, okay? Spokesperson for the other members of Congress, who the sources described as involved in the planning, did not respond to requests for comment. Gee, I wonder why. Congresswoman Greene and her staff were focused on the congressional election objection on the House floor and had nothing to do with planning any protest, Dyer said in an email. She objected just like Democrats who have objected to Republican presidential victories over the years. Oh, now, wait a minute. Wait, when did the Democrats rush the State House? Or the Capitol building? When did that happen? In anywhere. And again, they did rush the Capitol. They also rushed different state houses across the country and threatened to take the Michigan governor hostage. I mean, seriously. That did not happen. The Democrats did not do that. Republicans did that. Unhinged right-wingers who believe in the big lie. They're the ones who did that. Insanity. Flat out complete lie by Marjorie Taylor Greene's team because they know they're in trouble. Or at least in a functional system, they would absolutely be in trouble. I don't know if anything's going to happen to this because I don't even trust the system anymore. to go after people who supported openly insurrection, to try to overthrow the results of a legitimate election. It's incredibly frustrating. But now, as I said, Green's office also named a list of Democrats, falsely saying that they attempted to do exactly that when it came to President Trump in 2017. Again, fake news, didn't happen. Hillary Clinton conceded the election in January 9th, 2016. And by the way, Hillary Clinton, while she talked and complained about Russian interference, which, by the way, did actually happen, she never actually once said that they changed votes or stole the election from her. In fact, Clinton still largely blames, weirdly enough, Bernie Sanders for stealing, for weakening her chances against Donald Trump. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's crazy. That's really, really dumb. She's absolutely wrong. And look, but here's the thing, right? I think in her mind, she'd rather just not have primaries if you want to have that argument that, oh, well, see, we can't have somebody that runs against me in a primary election because that'll weaken my chances in the general. Well, how about you be a better candidate? How about you not suck as a candidate? And she did. She was a terrible candidate, which means, which shows you exactly why she lost to Donald Trump in 2016. And yes, absolutely, as a lot of you are pointing out in the chat, Bernie Sanders campaigned his ass off for Hillary Clinton, more so than she did. Bernie, and here's the thing that always frustrates me as well, for a second. Progressives always fight harder for the Democrats' agenda than the Democrats will ever fight for progressives. Super frustrating. Super frustrating. Nonetheless, blaming Russia and Bernie Sanders, again, weirdly enough, is not as crazy as some Trump supporters who literally still believe that Donald Trump is still the president today. Complete and utter insanity. Dyer then went on to say that nobody in the U.S. cares about January 6th. We just don't care. Well, now here's the thing. He's actually partly right. Nobody that he talks to cares. Nobody that he knows actually cares about it. And this is the thing about Republicans. This is why it's become insanely political. In fact, in an NBC News poll taken back in August, a couple of months ago, 59% of Americans said that they were concerned about the attack and its implications for the country. 47% said that they are very concerned, while an additional 12% say that they're kind of concerned. I'm sorry, not kind of. This one's just concerned. 40% said they're either just somewhat concerned, 14%, or not concerned at all, 26%. Do you want to guess what group the not concerns are? I mean, we know who it is. The majorities of Republicans and those living in rural areas said that they're not concerned at all. Shocker. Not only that, but of course, people who watch Fox News. They looked at media consumption, for example. Majorities of adults consume news either through cable news outlets like MSNBC or CNN, social media, newspapers, broadcast television, or radio news, all believe that the attack was an attempt to overturn the 2020 election and an act of terrorism. However, majorities of those who follow media outlets like Fox News or One America News say they disagree and instead believe the attack has been exaggerated to discredit Trump and his supporters. These are the same people, of course, that are like, what if it was secret FBI or secret Antifa that dressed up as Trump supporters to try to make Donald Trump look bad? Well, why would they have to do that when Trump supporters constantly make themselves look bad? All you have to do is just be like, hey, Trump supporter, be a Trump supporter. And they will immediately do bad things or embarrassing things. It's like, basically just giving someone their own rope and they will hang themselves with it in a figurative way. But one more thing here. So now one of the organizers did admit, he said, look, the breaking point for me on January 6th was when Trump starts talking about walking to the Capitol. I was like, let's get the fuck out of here. I do feel kind of abandoned by Trump. He added, I'm actually pretty pissed off about it, and I'm pissed at him. What the fuck? Well, then again, you were promised blanket pardons. And of course, Donald Trump, who did he pardon? Well, you pardoned criminals like Steve Bannon. Well, of course. Anybody who helped him, as far as people who were important that helped him. But if you're down in the ground, if you're a grunt, if you're one of the people that actually believed in him, that invaded the Capitol on January 6th, you didn't get a pardon. Because he doesn't care about you. He doesn't at all. And that's why this person says, quote, I have no problem openly testifying. Now, honestly, again, did you expect anything different? It's Donald Trump. He doesn't care at all about you or his word. It means nothing. It was all about trying to, of course, steal the election. And the fact that so many congressmen happen to be in on it, well, that's very, very concerning. Very concerning indeed. Maybe we should do something about it. Farron Cousins covered developments pretty well. There's a belief that there were serious talks of buying pardons. The Secret Service is now investigating too. That's really good information. By the way, Farron, awesome guy. So, great report. Are you going to join TYT? I'm an affiliate. So, I may not be like officially like one of the like in-house managed shows, like for example Rebel HQ, but I am an affiliate. So we should try to get Jeff on TYT more often. I'd like that. That was fun. Last time I was on it was really fun. So definitely. All right. Go to Cowboys for Trump. All right. The founder of Cowboys for Trump is no longer happy with Trump. Now, this was at a recent QAnon conference in Las Vegas, Nevada. A man named Coey Griffin. I thought that maybe it was like a typo or something, like Cody. No, it's Coey Griffin. Weird. But he decided to go after Trump for failing to deliver on some of his campaign promises. So what? Really worried about, for example, immigration or worried about the economy? No. Here's what he was worried about.
We supported President Trump because of his fight for justice as well. And for 4 years, we cried, lock her up, lock her up, lock her up. We know she's a criminal. What did the president tell us? If I was in charge of the law, you'd be in jail. Okay, Mr. President, you were in charge of the law for 4 years. At the end of your 4-year time, the only ones that were locked up were men like me and others like me that have stood by the president the strongest.
Okay, then. So now, a little bit of context. This guy's been charged with a misdemeanor for being on there on January 6th, of course, and has been offered by the Justice Department a plea deal, which so far he has apparently refused. Okay, so, you're going back to lock Hillary up. Oh, great. This was the big campaign promise that he is so upset about. I can't believe they didn't lock up my political opponent. Well, you can't actually do that. And by the way, even if he wanted to, because he definitely said that he wanted to, the president doesn't have the authority to unilaterally lock people up. That's just not what not what they can do. And by the way, it would be disastrous if a president had that power, because in a lot of places where presidents do have that power, well, those places happen to be dictatorships, where there is essentially complete one-party rule. Even if they say, oh, no, we got a democracy. No, we allow voting, but it's just for members of this one singular party or military junta or something like that. It would be a disaster, absolute disaster, to give a president that much power. And again, these are in places where there's lots of political corruption. Now, we have, of course, political corruption as well, so let's not minimize that. But, you also have dictators in other countries. For example, some of the recent leaders of these countries were locked up for one reason or another. Ukraine, Myanmar, Egypt, Uganda, Zambia, and Iran. Brazil also locked up Lula da Silva on phony corruption charges. Now, of course, thankfully he's free, and he's challenging Jair Bolsonaro, who is an openly right-wing fash. And so, good. I hope Lula wins. Lula Libre, all that stuff. But again, they do these things. They again, phony corruption charges. Always. This is what they talk about. Now, right-wingers look at that and they say, yes, because the only people that are corrupt are the ones that don't agree with me. Put them in prison. Lock them up. We don't like them. We don't like them. Well, if you do that, that's literal fascism. But there's a difference here, by the way. When a leader does actual crime, of course you should have punishments for them. So now, insurrection, or at least inciting insurrection, would appear to be a crime. But the far right, again, they don't actually care about this. Neither, of course, is Donald Trump, obviously. His entire thing at first was, by the way, tell the crazies what they want to hear, and that will lead me to getting money and power. Then, of course, his ego got in the way and started to believe his own bullshit. And, of course, we've all seen the stories where he would attempt to order people on his staff to do very illegal things. And they would tell him, I can't do those things. They are illegal. Now, good thing that he was a moron, that he is and was a moron, because he would forget about these things probably like a day later. Hey, go do this illegal thing. Sure thing, sir. Right on it. No, I'm not going to actually do that. And then a day later, he's like, what illegal thing? I didn't order anybody to do anything. I literally forgot. Too distracted. So, but anyway, so this whole story tells me two things, right? But for one, Cowboy Man over here, Cowboy Man and people like him are incredibly ignorant. They don't know how things work. And understand that they are ignorant politically. They're not very smart. They don't actually know how our government works. They don't know how it functions. And that's not necessarily an insult. There's a lot of people that don't understand how it functions. And by some design, it's difficult for the average person to learn the ins and outs in government. And so if you don't understand how everything works, it's totally fine. But like the other thing, though, is that the Constitution, and I'm going to explain this, right? The Constitution does not afford the president powers to lock people up unilaterally. Now, the right wing exploits that ignorance, that lack of knowledge, and the complexity of our political system in order to say, why isn't the president doing X? Why doesn't the president do this or that? Why didn't the president fix gas prices? Well, that's not something that he actually has the power to do. Again, going back to George W. Bush, I wish I had a magic wand for the low gas. Well, they don't have that. They don't have that ability to do so. And in fact, not really. What the president does doesn't really affect. Well, I can't say doesn't affect at all because taxes and things like that, and trade, etc. But he doesn't have a direct button where he could push to lower gas prices. And so that's one example of things that the president can't unilaterally do, right? And there are things that he can do. There are things that he cannot do. And so that's an important thing. It's an important distinction to point out. So now he can give pardons, the president can, but not put people in prison. So now the other thing here that this shows is that MAGA, not exactly about freedom. They don't really care too much about freedom. In fact, what they want is an authoritarian dictator in place, in power, in order to try to stop society from progressing, society from changing. Because these people don't want change, obviously. They don't want diversity, they don't want inclusion, they don't want brown or black people in power or positions of power, because at the end of the day, I believe that they think that they'll be treated the same way that they have treated them traditionally, i.e. badly. So they're like, oh my God, we know that we treated people badly. And that's, by the way, why we don't want critical race theory taught in schools, and for people to not know the history of what actually happened, and why we continuously try to rewrite history. Because if we lose power, we become a minority in our own country, then we're going to get treated very, very badly. That's what we're going to do. And so, that's what they're going to do, they think. So we're just going to prevent that from happening by lying and cheating and stealing, because instead of owning up to the past and actually becoming better people and changing with the times, they go full fash and try to get people in power who will punish their enemies and prevent any sort of progress. So that's why I worry about this. But look, it's a small amount of people, and let's be honest. But I am worried that these small amount of people, when they get into power, they change the rules. They're already doing so. They're changing the rules. They're doing voter suppression. They're trying to lock more Americans out And by the way, Americans are already apathetic about the political system as it is because, and I can understand why, because look at the $3.5 trillion reconciliation package, for example. It started with 10 trillion, down to 6 trillion, down to 3.5. Now they're talking about 1.5 or 1.75 between 1.9. And this is old stuff that was supposed to help the American people and negotiated down and down and down and down and down because of a few intransigent senators, Manchin, Sinema, Bob Menendez, and others who are not at all interested in, taxing the rich or doing anything about climate change, addressing that, or just overall helping regular Americans. And so people are understandably apathetic of the political system because it isn't serving them. And that just helps the right wing even more. So they can lock more and more people out of that system and turn America into a further right-wing authoritarian dystopia. It is incredibly scary. And it's very, very effective. Very effective. All right. Speaking of Joe Manchin, our next story. Senator Joe Manchin continues to be a massive pain in the ass. And he is starting to piss people off back in West Virginia. So now, according to a recent article in the Washington Post, his voters are furious that he had forced Democrats to take out certain social programs from the Reconciliation Human Infrastructure Package. As the Post reports, the Democrat from West Virginia implied that he would not support extending monthly payments from the expanded child tax credit without any changes. So changes, of course, would be means testing. So we're gonna do means testing, and we're gonna make sure to give Americans less if they make, I believe, over $60,000 a year, which in some places in this country is nowhere near wealthy. So now he said, and also adding work requirements. In fact, here's what he said in an interview. Quote, "There's no work requirements whatsoever. There's no education requirements whatsoever for better skill sets. Don't you think if we're going to help the children that the people should make some effort?" So understand what he's doing. He's implying that you're all lazy. If you get the child tax credit, y'all are lazy and you should be working. And, let's not ignore the fact that most Americans are working and are still in poverty. And that's a huge problem. And there's a lot of people who, by the way, are unable to work because childcare costs so much in this country, or they're disabled from COVID, for example. If you've had long COVID or you have any sort of permanent health issues from COVID, you could be technically disabled now. And so there's a lot of issues with that, with putting in these so-called work requirements and all this, disastrous means testing that they're trying to do. So now, according to the report, they talked about a family of Charleston, West Virginia. This is Ruth and James Jones, and they are barely getting by while raising two grandchildren, ages 10 and 17. The Post noting that they're surviving on James' part-time earnings as an Applebee's cook and Ruth's Social Security payments. Like thousands of other West Virginians, their financial burden has been eased since July by monthly federal payments, championed by the Biden administration to support families with children. Now, however, those funds, which total $500 a month, could vanish if lawmakers agree to the demands of their own Senator Joe Manchin III. According to the 64-year-old James, "We want Manchin to take a little bit more active role in protecting us as far as West Virginians. We're not a bunch of deadbeats. We work for a living, and we're due." So, all right, $500 a month. This is what Joe Manchin is so upset about. A family getting $500. Wow. He makes it sound like, oh my God, there are people getting thousands of dollars sitting on their butt and they're not doing anything. We should means test them. These people are on $500 and living high up the hog. Oh, that person's got Social Security. Well, obviously they're very incredibly wealthy. Super, super well. We need to tone that down. We are just giving too much money to poor people. You know how much the average rent is in West Virginia? And it, of course, varies from place to place, but the average, $925 a month. $925. And by the way, that's for a 2-bedroom apartment. For a 3-bedroom apartment in West Virginia, about $1,100. Joe Manchin is complaining about somebody getting $500 in a tax credit. Now, you know, for the rest of the country, by the way, the average rent is about $1,650 a month. So these payments, things like that, don't even touch it. Don't even touch it. And by the way, Joe Manchin, he looks at that and says, no, $500. Too much. You should get means tested. Absolutely. Means tested. Let's means test everybody, he says. Now, maybe we should means test Joe Manchin. Because Manchin made between $591,950 and nearly $1.5 million in West Virginia, in 2020, from EnerSystems, a coal company he founded in West Virginia. That's not all. Between 2011 and 2020, the West Virginia senator made between $4.9 million and $5.1 million from coal companies. And in 2020, he had between $1.4 to $5.8 million held in coal. Manchin also brought in tens of thousands of dollars in income from Farmington Resources, a mining company run by his son, between 2011 and 2020. Manchin received between $80,000 and $250,000 from dividends and interest in the company. So Joe Manchin gets all that money, but if you get a $500 credit, you damn well better be super, super poor, or else you're getting nothing. Nothing. Ridiculous. Now, there's more, of course. According to Beth Zarrett, President and Chief Executive of Catholic Charities West Virginia, for some of our clients, this is keeping them above water right now. West Virginia just has so many challenges. We struggle with jobs. We struggle with our people leaving our state for other jobs. The child tax credit has been huge. Seth DiStefano, policy director at the West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy, also said this: the opportunity to cut child poverty in half in West Virginia is one that we have to take, and imposing a work requirement basically neutralizes that benefit right out of the gate. Let's be clear, parenting is working, raising kids is work. I feel like that's such an important point. Now, I am not a parent myself, right? So I don't know firsthand, but I can only imagine how difficult it is to take care of another human being, a mini one. Oh, could you imagine? I think I don't want to do it. But like, okay, it is work, and yet you don't get paid for it. No, of course not. Now, interestingly enough, childcare. Gee, you want to wonder, want to guess why childcare is so important? Oh, right, because it's a lot of work. So in the childcare sector, super, super expensive. That's why so many parents can't actually afford to pay for childcare, which would be included in, or at least was going to be included in this bill. That is until, of course, Joe Manchin and the corporate Democrats try to strip it out. It's just horrible. Now, there's more. Jess Greenleaf, 38, who gets $550 a month, explained that how much she has come to depend on the help, says it takes close to an hour to get anywhere important. A lot of the resources that typically are available elsewhere don't trickle down to us. Many of our jobs are related to the gas and oil industry, and a lot of those jobs are on hold right now or are out of state. She added, what we see are a lot of upper class poor. These are individuals who make too much money for programmatic support, but are still struggling on the whole. So understand, this is why I hate means testing. And one of the many reasons, I guess, because generally it's based on outdated measures of poverty, right? And so these are things that don't necessarily take into account the different costs related to living in this country. And so the high cost of rent, high cost of student loans, of course, the fact that you need like an internet connection and a computer to be able to find jobs and find careers and do school and things like that. There are so many different factors that this does not take into play or into account. And so you get to a line, though, if you're poor, you get to a line, and if you're under that line, of course, you get help. Now, that line is incredibly low. You have to be very, very poor. You have to be pretty desperate for that, okay? But if you go over that line, a couple bucks, $50, right? That help's gone. Just gone. So, I mean, think about it this way. You work at Walmart, you know, and you're making $8.75 an hour, which is a fairly standard wage for Walmart. You get a raise to $9 an hour. Oh my God, you got a 25-cent raise. But that's just enough to put you over the line that your food stamps that were at $300 go down to $16. Now your income has not gone up significantly. Oh, but you make too much. Sorry, we're going to have to take the food stamps down. You got a raise and you're worse off. That's what happens in this country. It's horrible. That's a problem. That needs to get fixed. And you don't fix that by cutting or doing more aggressive means testing. No, you do stuff to try to help the American people get out of poverty. And you know what? A big way to get people out of poverty is to have incredibly strong and robust safety nets, not only to catch people, but to help them bounce back. And that, of course, one of those things means higher wages. You've got to guarantee people can have a higher wage, high enough to live. And so that's why it's frustrating. And now this tax credit, again, should be one of those universal programs. And I believe that a lot of the programs we have should be universal. You know why? You make it universal, it's a lot harder to fight against it. A lot harder to try to get it to go away. It makes it harder so you can't pit these two different groups against each other. And that's what a lot of politicians do. They will pit groups of poor people against each other. Like one is slightly poorer and gets these benefits. And then you've got other groups that are hanging by a thread. And you say, well, we're not the real problem. The politicians, the giant corporations taking all the money and this upward redistribution of wealth. No, it's the guy over there who's taking just a little bit more in government handouts than you. And that's, of course, how they'll phrase it. Oh, they're the ones taking your stuff. Not us. No, it's those guys. Go fight each other, and then we're going to pick your pocket behind the scenes. So, and again, this thing, look, this tax credit cuts child poverty in half. Half. We should go the full way. Instead, we're having an argument of like, no, we should means test that so that less children can be out of poverty. Less children. And you know why? It's because Joe Manchin don't give a goddamn about the kids. No, he only cares about himself and his boat full of money. Literal boat full of money. Hey, you know what else hurts the kids? Climate change. Climate change from the dirty coal business. Look, this guy, it's amazing we have a system where an openly corrupt coal baron can sit there and make decisions on climate change. I mean, it's disastrous. He does not deserve to be called a public servant because he is serving himself. Serving himself. And so, hey, you know what? West Virginia, if you're unhappy, and you should be with Joe Manchin for opposing the Democrats' Build Back Better program, maybe you ought to show him the next election and kick him out. And maybe vote for somebody who's more progressive. Let's see. Hey, Anxiety Dragon Girl says on Twitch, I was a county worker for the last 4 years. Denying assistance to people is all they wanted. I recently resigned for many reasons, along with them acting like COVID was fake. Oh, Jesus. That's terrible. They won't vote him out. They had the opportunity to do so and didn't. I don't know. Well, you know what? There's maybe next time. Maybe next time. I mean, you can't stop trying to fight to replace these disastrous Republicans. I mean, they are basically Republicans at this point. Let's see. I'd rather that than pay for endless wars. True. More comments that I wanted to see here from Twitch and of course on YouTube as well. In Jersey, I have some friends that work at Walmart and they do so much better than they make $13 an hour. The cashiers make $11, and they have some that make more. Hey, that's good. That's good to see that there are people, but it should be, I mean, at least $15, if not 22, 23 minimum wage. And think of it this way too. Be like, well, hold on, that's too much. They're just going to replace all the workers with the machines. Well, hey, you say you have a worker shortage. Why aren't you doing the machines now? I mean, this now would be a great time to put in all the machines that you were threatening workers with the whole time for asking for higher wages. Oh, maybe it's because you never did that. You never wanted to do that. And you just wanted to threaten them so that they would stay in line and not ask for fair wages they deserve. They already do self-checkout in many places. Yes, they do. But you can't get rid of all the humans. Okay? You just can't. You can't get rid of them all. Because then, people are going to get pissed. All right. Let's see. Dino Manchin. Yeah, let's read a couple, find a couple of YouTube comments to respond to as well. How many upper class people would still use free childcare? You know what? It actually doesn't really matter to me how many would use it. If it was a lot, think about it. It's the same argument that I see from people who are against universal college, right? So free tuition, right? Oh, well, how many rich people are going to use it? Probably not that many because they'll go to private schools, super wealthy private schools. Even so, if some of them use it, that's totally fine because their family ideally will be paying more into the tax system. So if you get the free child care, well, that's all right. If you're a wealthy person, you should be paying more into the taxes to cover it anyway. So yeah, you may be taking part in the system, but you're actually paying more out for other people to take in and use the system as well. Community college is gone. Unfortunately, yes, they nixed that. I talked about that a couple of days ago on the show. It is quite a bad faith argument. That's true. All right. So let's get to more stories here. We got two more for y'all. Let's go to disastrous Republicans. Donald Trump Jr. is selling some incredibly tacky merchandise over the accidental shooting death of 42-year-old cinematographer Helena Hutchins by producer and actor Alec Baldwin. So I want to show you this. It's gross. Well then. Yeah. So that happened. So now he's charging $27.99 for that hot garbage, which literally is just like, there's no design on it. It's just, yeah, it's just that. Now, I wish I could say something like, oh my God, I didn't, how low is the, oh my God, I did not expect this from Donald Trump Jr. No, the par for the course. Par for the course. As is, of course, the fact that he also posted a Photoshop picture of the actor wearing that t-shirt. Oh, of course. Yeah, great. Now, there is no bottom to that barrel. The Trump family and the right wing in general, I mean, they don't care. They don't give a damn that somebody needlessly died as a result of a freak accident. No, what they do is immediately jump into pro-gun talking points, which, by the way, gun control, in this case, is not even an issue. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a little bit. But now, first, though, the right wing, ever since this happened, well, they're going after Alec Baldwin, for one, of course, the fact that he's outspoken against the NRA, and the fact, of course, that he's called for common sense gun reforms. Okay. For example, 2018, he tweeted at Dana Loesch. Here's what Alec Baldwin said. He said, I see that Dana Loesch wants to take back the truth, and she doesn't care how many dead bodies she has to step over in that pursuit. The Second Amendment is not a moral credit card that buys you all the guns you want. That law needs to be rethought. All right. Now, he also joined a coalition of other celebrities and activists in forming something called the No Rifle Association Initiative, which aims to reduce the NRA's sphere of influence on American politics and society, according to a report in The Guardian at the time. Okay, and now the group had hoped to curb the NRA's influence by encouraging voter registration, public demonstrations, as well as boycotts. So now all of that is typical liberal politics. I don't have any problem with that. And by the way, neither do a sizable majority of gun owners. They're fine with certain restrictions, smaller magazine sizes, bump stock bans, etc. Something, a little bit to reduce gun deaths. Okay? But again, this is not about gun control. This isn't about that. This was a prop gun. Prop gun that was supposed to fire blank rounds. It's actually very, very rare that somebody gets injured or killed from a prop gun. Now, the last one that I'm aware of was Brandon Lee, of course, on the set of The Crow, back in 1990, I believe 1993 or 96. But, that's what happened. And of course, you can get injured with a prop gun because it still has gunpowder, gas, and even a projectile that could come out and injure or kill someone. So now, here's the thing, though. It wasn't about guns. It's about Alec Baldwin making fun of Trump and supporting gun regulation. For example, here's J.D. Vance, who tweeted at Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey saying, please let Trump back on. We need Alec Baldwin tweets. No, we don't. Candace Owens also said the shooting was poetic justice for Baldwin's Trump mockery. Baldwin didn't get shot. Helena Hutchins got killed. And she's saying, poetic justice, that he shot and killed someone in a freak accident. Again, there's no bottom to the barrel. No bottom to the barrel. So no, especially considering Junior's response. He said, screw all the sanctimony I'm seeing out there. The shoe was on the other foot. Alex Baldwin, he said Alex, would literally be the first person pissing on everyone's grave trying to make a point. Fuck him. So now, here's the thing. So Donald Trump Jr., he woke up that morning. He had a choice, right? Be garbage, be a trash person, or not be a trash person. Well, he chose to be trash. So now the discussion here, as I said, could not be about labor. About gun control or banning blanks. It actually should be about labor. This is a workers' rights issue. Now, how is that? Why would you say that? Well, for one, I don't necessarily blame Baldwin directly for Hutchins' death, but he plays culpability. In fact, her family doesn't either, but he does, beyond pulling the trigger, hold some fault to this. And I'm going to explain how. So now, this actually could have been avoided had Baldwin not replaced experienced union workers from the IATSE 600 with scab workers. So that's where the fault is, okay? In fact, the ones that were there to check the gun to make sure it was a cold gun and didn't have a projectile in it that could be dangerous was someone who was a scab worker. As a producer, Baldwin, or co-producer of the movie, Baldwin cut corners in order to cut costs. This is according to the LA Times. The camera crew had walked off the set earlier that day in protest of terrible working conditions. In fact, a person who identified themselves as a member of the camera crew on Rust, the movie Baldwin was co-producing and starring in, wrote a series of posts about how the crew had been treated like, quote unquote, absolute dog shit. Here's a quote. At the moment, I'm finding to get my crew on this movie hotel rooms when we go long or too tired to drive the hour back from location to Albuquerque. They either say no or offer a garbage roadside motel that's used as a homeless shelter. In fact, the line producer on the flick complained that the motel she booked charges her $10 more per night than the homeless. They haven't even paid the crew a proper check. Huh. So now the crew, of course, being treated terribly, decided, well, that's it. We're going to strike. We're going to walk off. We're not at all interested in working in these terrible conditions. So, you know, they walked off. Baldwin then decided to hire scab labor. Now, what's scab labor, some of you are asking? That's basically slang for non-unionized workers who are there to undercut a strike by going and working in place of the union workers. So they just call them scab workers because they're terrible. They're quite terrible. And don't be a scab. Don't support scabs. Never cross the picket line. So these people came in and they were inexperienced, of course, and underpaid, as usual. And so that was one problem. The other problem, of course, is faulty equipment. That same prop gun had already misfired several times during filming. As I mentioned, those guns can be dangerous or even deadly without a bullet. They can fire projectiles, gas, and gunpowder, which at certain ranges can be very, very deadly. Okay, 3 times. 3 times. Now, add on to that, filming that sometimes takes 16 hours. Very, very, very long days, long hours. So now you have fatigue, now you have mistakes that are made on and faulty equipment and unskilled workers who don't know what they're doing necessarily in films to replace unionized workers. And this was a disaster waiting to happen. And of course it did. And all of it could have been avoided had Alec Baldwin and his other producer friend that were producing this movie actually made a good working place, had good working conditions, and paid people well, and made sure that they had everything that they needed to do their job safely and securely. In fact, this is what happens, unfortunately, in a lot of places, in a lot of movie sets or television sets. You have these workers that are overworked, underpaid, and you've had since 1990, you had a total of 43 on-set workers die. It's not just people like Brandon Lee. It's people like Helena Hutchins that were behind the camera. You have stunt people that die. You have camera operators that die. You have all these sorts of situations where you have people, accidents, and a lot of it is cost cutting. That's it. Cost cutting. And so you have this negligence and dangerous conditions as a result of trying to save money and not pay their workers. And that's really the big issue here. An issue that is conveniently ignored by the far right, J.D. Vance and Don Jr. But by the way, this is also ignored by Hollywood film studios. And is a really important explanation as to why IATSE, the union that represents these workers, has already authorized a strike. In fact, I think it was somewhere around 98% of the vote among 90%. So 90% of the members of the union showed up to the vote, and 98% overwhelmingly said, yes, let's strike. Because things are going so badly for us workers on these sets and are so dangerous that we got to do something. We got to do something. So this is absolutely a story of labor and of how cutting corners and cutting costs and treating your workers like crap leads people to get hurt or die. Labor. It's all about labor. But understand that the right wing is never going to call for better working conditions. They're never going to call for fair contracts. In fact, they're usually the bosses that are against fair contracts and union labor. Instead, you can see they're using this to make nonsense political points and to make disgusting jokes at dead people's expense. They are the lowest of the low. As I mentioned, there is no bottom to that barrel. All right. Let's go to Pokemon. Oh, God. A little bit of a lighter story, I guess. Oh, why did he fire a gun at them anyway? Is that necessary? If he was, for instance, demonstrating what he was planning to do, that's my question. From the reports, he was practicing taking the gun out of the holster and aiming it at the camera. And I guess apparently took it out, fired it on accident, and it hit somebody who was fairly close. So that's what happened. All right. Did Candace Owens move to Australia yet? Australia don't want her. Let's say that. All right. Paycheck Protection Program was a loan program created to supposedly help small businesses during COVID. But there were some big issues with it. Apparently a lot of abuse. Now, the Justice Department Justice Department News recently released a document showing that there were a litany of business items that were allegedly bought with pandemic funds meant to aid struggling businesses. And for example, one man was charged with spending his loan money on strip clubs. Another pleaded guilty to using his funds for a $318,000 Lamborghini. But there is one man that seems to have outdone everyone. Not an amount spent, but what they spent it on. So I'm going to butcher this name, and I apologize, but Vinath Udamsin, I told you I was going to butcher it. Well, he decided to use his small business loan to buy Pokemon. You heard me, Pokemon. In fact, on July 14th, according to prosecutors, he sought a loan for a business that he said had 10 employees and a revenue of $235,000 a year. The next month, the court document states the SBA deposited $85,000 into his bank account. Prosecutors say the card that he had bought, the Pokemon card, most of that money was spent on a $57,789 Pokemon card. That's more than 2/3 of the federal aid. Now, by the way, he didn't actually own a small business. He lied about it. It was false information. And yet, he's like, well, I'm just going to lie. Nobody checks anything anyway. So I'm going to lie. I'm going to get all this money. And then I'm going to Pokemon. I was going to make a Pokemon and go to the polls, but terrible, terrible joke. I'm going to go buy a Pokemon card. Alrighty then. So, wow. How did this happen? Well, it turns out, just like progressives had warned about the CARES Act and things like that, there wasn't enough oversight in who was getting the money from the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, I remember talking about how very large corporations were dipping into this money, even though they didn't actually need it. And of course, we found out that a lot of these corporations that got this money ended up firing employees instead of keeping them on, and also using money to go and buy back their own stock, which raises share prices. They get increased executive compensation and all that stuff. So, and increased dividends. Now, a federal watchdog said this month the Small Business Administration had actually overpaid about $4.5 billion in grants to self-employed people, and said that there was no system of control in place to flag applications with flawed or illogical information. What kind of flawed or illogical information? Well, apparently somebody claimed to have 1 million employees. 1 million. Wow. Now, there's other stuff here. But yeah, that's crazy. Crazy. Now, the SBA Inspector General also concluded that the federal agency had rushed out billions of dollars in loans through the program at the expense of controls that could have blocked inappropriate aid. The result, according to the SBA Inspector General, was limited assurance that loans went only to eligible recipients, and also faulted the administration of President Donald Trump and called that case, quote, another example of the fraud that resulted from lax controls. Now, that was a big problem. That is a problem. Now, contrast that to the aid that went out to regular people. You remember the pandemic checks, right? Supposed to get $2,000. We didn't get $2,000. Not at all. And by the way, the checks that went out were all means tested, heavily. The ones that were passed during the Biden administration as well, the last round of checks, were even more means tested than the ones that went under Donald Trump. Means tested for the American people, but not means tested for these corporations. Weird. Huh. So now, as I said, if you're a business or you claim to be a business, well, then that money's free for you. It's just waiting for you. It almost seems stupid not to take the money. And these corporations did, as well as some of the scammers. In one widely covered case in spring 2020, a Georgia reality TV star was charged with using more than $1.5 million in aid for personal use rather than business expenses, notably a Rolls Royce, and paying $40,000 in child support. So now the government is going after the scammers. One of them is hit with 56 months in prison. But what about those large companies? What about the companies that also lied about needing this money so much? Oh, we're going to go to business if we don't get daddy government to bail us out. Well, apparently nothing. SEC filings found about a total of 179 public companies who got money from this program had money in the bank. They had a ton of money. Many of these companies, as I said, they bought back their own stock in order to drive up share prices. Liz Hempowitz, director of public policy for the nonprofit Project on Government Oversight, had data showing how the Trump administration chose to focus its COVID relief efforts on helping wealthy organizations at the expense of small firms. And a post-analysis of 4.9 million loans released by the SBA contained numerous errors. For example, many companies were reported to have retained far more workers than they employ in some cases. The agency's job claim for an entire industry surpassed the total number of workers in those sectors. For more than 175,000 borrowers, the data showed that 0 jobs were supported or no information listed at all. Additionally, a blanket approval allowed Congress, officials, and their families to receive Paycheck Protection loan funds without a required conflict of interest review. Several members of Congress, including some who helped shape the program's rules, benefited from funds, according to news reports and numerous financial records. So the Pokemon guy aside, he's a drop in the bucket compared to the massive fraud from big corporations and other companies who took millions in taxpayer funding, while normal people, regular people, working people got crumbs. It was a massive redistribution of wealth going straight to the top, and everybody knew it. And if you notice, it's not the big companies that are being punished. I mean, sure, some of them have had to, oh my God, they had to return the money. But nobody got prison time. No executives were locked up or charged. Nothing like that. So if you steal millions of dollars and boost your stock price, well, during a pandemic, well, that's fine. All you got to do is just give them the money back. You're totally fine. No problem. Even though, of course, you did personally take home cash from those dividends and those stock prices. And so you made a ton of money. But you steal $80,000 and you blow most of it on a Pokemon card, which is stupid, no doubt. But they're going to throw the book at you. Obviously, both are wrong. You shouldn't do either. But our system obviously incentivizes doing one thing over the other. Only one of those people or those groups are being held accountable. And it's because of our broken-ass, two-tiered justice system. I mean, rob a bank, you get years in prison. Own a bank and rob regular people, well, then you can buy a congressman and do whatever the hell you like. That's the unfortunate, reality of our system. All right. Oof. Terrible. All right. Let's see. Let me go through and thank some Twitch people, wonderful Twitch viewers. Captain Bielchin, thank you for subbing for a month of Tier 1. Appreciate that. Ghost of Feldner, thank you for subbing at Tier 1 again. Appreciate that. Annie Sarah, thank you for giving out a Tier 1 community sub. I appreciate that. Those of you who want to help out the show, please do so by subbing or sharing or giving bits and things like that. Really, really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for those who have already done that. Depends on the Pokemon card. True, I don't know anything about Pokemon, so I'm worse. I'm almost worse than Hillary Clinton in that regard, except that I didn't make that terrible Pokemon go to the polls joke. God. But thank you for the new follows as well. Appreciate that. By the way, I do on Sunday I did an interview where I talked with Cole James Cash. I'm gonna throw that up on the whole thing up on my Patreon when I get a chance, and I've also got a segment from that where he covers a anti-mask rally, an anti-vax rally in Canada. So that should be fun. Should be fun. Hey, regular Mole Rat Dragon, thank you for cheering 230. Appreciate that. All right. Correct, I was just thinking about that. Crappy joke Hillary did. You're not that bad. Like any collectible item, the older it is, the better. It's so cringe, though. It's so cringe. Super cringe. All right. So, Wells Fargo's heavily reprimanded. Pfizer and J&J also lost billions in recent class action lawsuits. Yeah, but that's, again, nobody's getting put in prison for it. So, that. Do I have to take out some garbage? Old. Trash can is hungry. And it shall be fed. Let me find it. By the way, I am going to let's see. We're gonna raid in. So don't go anywhere. Everybody on Twitch. I'm gonna do a raid here into, let's see. Let's go to Left Flank Vets. It's been a while since I raided into them. So we're gonna set that up. And out garbage. Boom. All right. That. Yep, I got you. All right. Anyway, again, thank you. Make sure to come back tomorrow, same time, same place. We do the stream 5 days a week. So, looking forward to see, hopefully, many of you come back. All right. Where we're going to raid? We're going to raid into Left Flank Vets. So, they're pretty cool over there. Very, very left-wing, very progressive. Everyone else, thank you. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Are you kicking me out the door?
Dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
Oh no!
Please clap.
Are you kicking me out the door? You're kicking me out the door.